Hey there everybody, it's markcrilley. I'm back with another how to draw video. Today we're going to be learning how to draw a praying mantis. This is number 11 in my ongoing playlist of videos devoted to how to draw animals. I'll put a link to that playlist in the info box. Now most of those other videos are about larger animals like tigers or wolves. I never have done one devoted to insects, and so I thought I would begin with one of my favorite insects, the praying mantis. Now I've got a square here. People like to know the dimensions. It's 3 3/4 on all sides. That works out to around 9.5 centimeters. And notice that the line here on the bottom goes all the way across. It sort of extends past the lower right-hand corner. That's on purpose. That's going to help us right now, in fact, as we begin to draw the basic guidelines of the abdomen. All right, so a couple of things can help you in terms of getting this shape right, and I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but you saw that the square has been divided into quarters by way of intersecting lines that go right into the middle of the square. That can help you for finding this point where the back of the abdomen intersects, goes right through that line and then heads down here, and the underside, this curving line down here, actually touches quite neatly upon that lower line. So hopefully that can help you get the shape of the abdomen right. It is quite large. I was surprised to realize as I studied photos of the praying mantises how large the abdomen is in proportion to the thorax. And speaking of the thorax, let's go ahead and draw it right now. Okay, so with the thorax, you see quite narrow and kind of coming into, almost looks like a waist, like a feminine sort of shapely insect waist that comes in here. And this line, to be honest, just is going to go away. I thought it was helpful in terms of seeing the initial shape, but there really is not a straight line that goes across there. In terms of, really the thorax, as far as I could see, and the abdomen kind of blend together pretty smoothly. And I suppose now's as good a time as any to point out that, there's got to be lots of different kinds of praying mantises, and I'm sure there are varieties that don't look like the one that I'm drawing today. But, for these how to draw videos, you got to choose one. So that's what I'm doing. And now it's time to draw the head, which conveniently looks quite a lot like a triangle. Let's go ahead and get it into place. All right, well, now this is fairly simplified, what I've done here. We're going to be refining it later on to make it more accurate. But for now, this sort of kind of bulging triangular shape, if you can pay close attention to its size in relation to the rest of the body, maybe you can sort of check out that one square and see, I would say you could fit about 5 of them diagonally going across. That might help you in terms of getting the size right. And now it's time, and I think I'll just do this all at once. I'm going to do the, to me, what I would think of as like the biceps, the arms, and then the 2 legs. I guess down here we would think of them as like thighs almost coming off of the body. I'm going to go ahead and get the 1, 2, 3 of them in place, and then I'll come back to give you some pointers in terms of getting them in the right location. All right, so up here we have what really appears to be arms. I'm not really sure technically. Of course, we all say insects have 6 legs, so who knows how these are classified scientifically. But what I was really struck by is the width, how sort of beefy they are. Especially interesting as we get down here to the legs. You'll find that the arms are actually bigger and heavier looking, which sort of goes against a lot of what we normally see in the animal kingdom. In any case, pay attention to not so much the angle of this, but the length of it. The square here sort of helps us figure out the length from here to here. Of course, this is a joint here. It could be moving, so I don't want to stop you from making the arms go in any sort of configuration that you want to, but you certainly don't want them to extend too far, because then you won't be getting the anatomy right. So down here, this one, these 2 quite close together. These the 2 rear legs, middle leg, rear leg, I'm not really sure. But again, the vertical line here can help you with the placement. not necessarily the angle, but pay attention to the length of this, and they're similar lengths to these two. For the photos that I looked at, this one looks slightly larger, but really quite similar in size. These two, what I was calling thighs, the praying mantis thighs, definitely not the right technical term there. But what I want to do now is add just a few more basic guidelines that are going to help us in terms of placing the arms and the legs. And then after that, I'm going to knock it off with the time lapse, and we're going to do some real-time drawing. All right, so with these lines, it's not so much the angle that needs to be replicated as the length. These are all sort of jointed limbs that can go into a wide variety of configurations. But if you're going for accuracy, this is the basic length that you want. I would say similar lengths. This one may be a touch longer, but you're going to see a lot of this is sort of like a long claw at the end. Over here, again, not necessarily the angle, but the length you want to pay attention to for maybe the third part, right? It's going to come up here and then come down here. Very, very, very narrow, thin legs here and over here as well, reminding me maybe like a grasshopper almost. The legs getting very thin toward the end. If you do want to repeat this angle that I've chosen for the rear leg, pay attention to how it sort of creates a tiny little triangle here, starting at this line and then shooting past here, stopping. Again, the length is maybe the main thing to focus on for getting the proportions right. Well, it is time for me to refocus the camera. I'm going to try to get as close in on the head as I can, and we'll start refining that into the eyes and various other features. All right, now we can get into some real-time drawing. I've sent old man time-lapse down to the coffee shop. Should be quite a while before he comes back. He loves his coffee. I'm going to start to take this triangle and separate off the corners into the eye shapes. They are sort of oval, almost sort of egg-shaped eyes. Depending on how you feel about them, you might regard them as a little creepy because they remind me of like chameleon eyes, almost like there's a shell that goes all the way around and then just a tiny hole at the end. I don't know. Maybe those of you who know more about the praying mantis, you can inform me as to whether they move around a little like the chameleon's eyes do. But basically, you're looking at very, eye shapes that are not, in fact, eyes the way we regard them as, but sort of some like exoskeleton covering, as best as I can see. Now, it gets fairly complex down here in the area of what we would call the nose. I'm not going to get too much into refining, but suffice to say, they're like little plates down here. If you can, get photos that really zoom in super close. What I was surprised to see is that there are a couple of downward sloping mandibles. Hope I'm getting the right word there. Way down at the tip. They're so tiny that you don't normally see them. But the curve, and I hope that's showing up, they're sort of curving down like this. And then underneath, almost impossible to see with the naked eye, are the sort of counter mandibles. I'm just making up words left and right today. But they are curving in the opposite direction. Anyway, not crucial to get all that stuff right, I don't think. Just thought I'd toss that in there for those of you who are sticklers for accuracy. There are some sort of support structures down here. Looks like bags under the eyes. Oh, man, I hardly slept at all last night. And then up here, the antenna, and I'm a little confused as to the length of the... they get so small that sometimes in photographs even it's hard to see where they stop, basically. But as I looked at more diagrams, like, that show the anatomy, they were not drawing super, super long antenna. So I'm going to just come in here and sort of dash in one that is, maybe more or less the length of this forearm area. But again, very thin. They have sort of a support structure at the base, but then they get thin quite quickly. And I'm going to have the other one going off in the opposite direction, as they seem to do. in most of the photographs I saw. And that maybe kind of does it for the head there. While I'm in here with the, got the camera focused in this direction, I might as well continue working down into the area of the thorax. I'm taken back to my old biology classes when I was a kid, and they taught us about the thorax. Not a word you use in everyday life too much. But one thing I noticed, and again, there's going to be a lot of different species or varieties of praying mantis, so I can't say that this is true of all of them, but there did seem to be a dividing line here, sort of like an upper shell almost. Reminds me maybe a little of how a turtle, has a shell that even has like a ridge on it. Comes across here and eventually recedes into the lower part of the thorax. Now I'm going to erase away this upper arm. As I said, I was surprised to see how large and heavy looking the arms are compared to the legs. And there is sort of a point here where it connects to the rest of the thorax, which is pretty strongly delineated. But in this area, the photos that I looked at, you couldn't really see where the arm stopped and the thorax began. It was a very subtle kind of gradation there. Now, interesting to me is that in this upper area of this, what I'm going to call the biceps, and I don't care what the scientists say, these are biceps, people. There seemed to be sort of a dividing line here, just more or less a subsection, and then spikes that run across the upper area. I don't know if they serve a purpose, but it's like a serrated steak knife almost. It's like he's got his own personal steak knife running along his upper arms. But what is sort of interesting is that when you get to the other, this sort of mid-arm, this is the upper arm, this is the forearm, let's call this the mid-arm, the serrated edge is on the opposite side, which I thought was sort of interesting. I would expect that if it's serrated here, that would continue, but no. That's just what they'd be expecting me to do. So over here you see, again, I don't know if it's serrated is quite the right word. It almost looks like a comb, like the teeth of a comb coming up here. But notice the width, as I said, really quite a massive structure if you are thinking in terms of what we normally expect in proportion to the legs. It is sort of interesting how big the arms are. And that surely is related to the way that it, gets its food, I would think. I'm just theorizing things. But surely, I mean, I don't know if it's for attacking and winning the battle and allowing him to eat, or if it's more for cutting up the food or whatever, but certainly there seems to be a lot of mass and strength devoted to these arms. And then over here, this sort of serrated edge over here is indeed on the same side as this one is. I always thought that the praying mantis was just the coolest looking insect, with the possible exception of the dragonfly, which is also cool looking to me. Maybe they're rivals. Maybe they see themselves as in competition. Who is the coolest of them all? With the dragonflies saying, "Look, you can't fly. What, you got wings, but you can't fly. Look, you call those? And okay, you can fly a little bit. No, look at these. These are wings." The Brooklyn dragonfly. So, does the praying mantis, is he also from Brooklyn, or is he from some other place? I'm really going down a rabbit hole of weirdness this morning. Too much coffee? Too little coffee? You people be the judge. But I'm going in and doing the second arm back here. And again, this is, all of these joints are flexible and you could come up with any pose you want. You may decide that this one is not quite the classic praying pose that you expect to see from a praying mantis. I sort of looked at a photo and saw that at least one particular praying mantis, at one particular moment, had his arms in a formation like this, sort of stretching out. But I didn't talk too much a moment ago. I got distracted by my own Brooklyn Dragonfly idea, but I didn't talk too much about this last forearm area. Maybe it's really the hands, the claws, who knows, but it does sort of split into a, there's this long claw here at the end, and then there's a curving back sort of secondary claw that goes into the sort of what I was calling the teeth of a comb kind of an area. And that's how you end up with the I had to check, I was scared, I looked at my camera. What if people can't even see this? But whew, I dodged a bullet, folks. You could actually see what I was drawing. And that means that I probably need to refocus the camera so that we can get into the details of the rest of the thorax going down into the abdomen. So just a moment, I'll be right back. All right, well, I'm going to get the legs in place now, and so I guess the main thing is to get the connection between this, what I was calling a sort of thigh, and the secondary part of the leg. And so basically, and this is more what I would expect in the animal kingdom, the sort of the thigh connecting to the body being the thickest part, this secondary part down here being getting a little narrower, and then finally this last part that stretches down to the leg being very, very narrow indeed. And when you get down here to the end of that first line that I made, that really signals you to stop this last part of the leg and start going into a curving, very, to me, it just looks like your classic insect kind of foot, where it divides into segments that seem to kind of hook into one another. Certain plants I've seen have a structure a little bit like this. I wonder if you know what I'm talking about. I hope you know what I'm talking about, because I certainly don't. In any case, this it is a vaguely S-shaped kind of a thing, but then I noticed that there's a hook going back. So that's the sort of basic structure of that foot, if indeed foot is the right word, and it probably isn't. But let's go ahead then and get the other one, the other leg. And I always like, when I'm doing things like this, to not have it mirror the first leg too much, too carefully. It always looks unnatural to me when they're in the exact same pose. So what I'm going to do is have it sort of cut back at a slightly different angle. And I wonder if any of the rest of you were fascinated with praying mantises when you were kids. I remember I had a model kit that showed a praying mantis attacking a city. Back in the days of model kits, do they even exist anymore? But yeah, I loved the idea of a giant praying mantis attacking the city. I don't think I would have loved it in real life, in my city. That would have been kind of terrifying, but in the world of my imagination, I was like, that would be so awesome. So I'm basically replicating that same leg over here, coming across. Don't forget the little hook back here. It's like the equivalent of don't forget the blushies. Don't forget the hook. markcrilley's insect drawing channel. All insects, all the time. So coming back here, and you may notice that I'm not really drawing the top part. That's because this is all going to be concealed a little bit by wings later on, folded up wings. But let's take this and connect it. Again, to me, it reminds me quite a lot of like grasshopper legs. And who knows, maybe they are related. Maybe they're first cousins. You know my first cousin, the grasshopper. Yeah, we go way back. Anyway, coming down here, it gets really quite thin. And again, this was sort of startling to me as I studied the photos and thought, wow, they got these really quite thick, strong arms, but when we go down to the legs, they're very, very tiny. So I guess the legs are not playing a role in attacking their prey, I suppose, and so it doesn't need to. Now, what happens down here when you get to the legs? They're curving back in the opposite direction, and this time I said this one over here is a little bit like of an S shape. This one, not an S shape in the photos I saw. The species that I was looking at, just a simple curve, really. But again, it has that sort of interlocking subsegments of the substructures. Coming down like that, and then again a hook. Don't forget the hook. Never forget the hook, people. Curving in back, right? It's sort of like the opposite, sort of mirror image of what we did over there. You can hear the pencils as my elbow goes into my impossibly cluttered desk. And I'm going to just quickly get the other one. I'll give myself some time lapse. Hey, old man time lapse, get back in here. I'm going to draw the other leg in time lapse. Alright, so my apologies to old man time-lapse. Had to interrupt him. He had to come running back down from the coffee shop to help me speed through that other leg, but I figured it was basically the same thing. Now, there is a sort of a ridge going along the thigh, to once again use the completely wrong word. Thias praying manticus, as they say in Latin. And now it's time to get the wings in place. Now, this is one part of it where I noticed different species have very different lengths in terms of the wings. So my apologies if I'm sort of mixing together different species here. But one photo showed quite short wings, and then so many of the other photos showed wings that went all the way down to the tip of the abdomen that I thought, well, boy, maybe it's not a good idea to have my drawing have wings that are too short, if that is indeed unusual and not representative of the majority of praying mantises. Is the plural of praying mantis praying mantises, or is it one of these weird praying manti? Mantum, the praying mantum. That doesn't sound plural at all, Mark. Did you ever study Latin? No, I did not. Anyway, so you can see that it's the shape of it is fairly wide, coming down here over these parts of the leg. I'm actually trying to widen it out a little more than what I did. Obscuring the upper reaches of the legs, and then sort of coming back and getting narrower and narrower the shape of it until it reconnects back down there. Now, over here in the sort of abdomen itself, again, different species, different styles, but at least one of them I saw had a sort of dividing line here. Not really a line. You're going to see in a moment what I end up doing with this. But it's got these plates, these, again, sort of interlocking plates. And there's like an upper plate and a lower plate. And this line will help you to get both of those plates in the proper location. They're quite wide, these plates. I mean, from here to here, right? It's not like snake belly, where you put a whole bunch of lines like that. They are quite widely spaced, these just large plates. And they continue coming across. Maybe, again, the lines start to sort of follow the form of the abdomen, so that these lines are kind of fanning out a little bit, or curving in slightly different directions. And then when you get all the way to the tip, it was a little hard for me to see in the photographs I was studying, but there did seem to be some separate section here that was coming out at a different angle, and even a couple of, like, almost look like the mandibles or whatever. And again, if we have any entomologists out there, you might be able to explain what is the purpose of these things here at the back. Unless it's really gross, man, then I don't want to hear it. Okay? And one thing that struck me is in terms of the wings, when they're folded down here, you know, they're not being used for temporary flight or whatever. They look quite a lot like leaves. I mean, they remind me of these sort of amazing camouflage insects. At least one photo that I was looking at, I thought, man, that wing really looks like a leaf. It could be mistaken for a leaf, the way that sort of veins of a leaf come across, and all these like little patterns that you'd see in a leaf. I thought that was interesting, but I'm not going to get too much into that right now. Actually, I think I'm kind of getting this wrong a little bit down here. Apologies. I think this one actually should go straight all the way down. And that may be getting us near to the end of the lesson. I think there is maybe a little bit of structure in here. Again, I found it hard to see clearly what was going on in this part of the body, so I may be just sort of winging it. Oh, Curly, that was terrible. Unsubscribe. I probably lost a dozen subscribers just with that one joke. But it's time now for me to pull out my trusty black Prismacolor and do the final line work. I'm going to do that all in time-lapse. And then we will maybe try to do just a little bit of shading real time. But let's face it, this one took a long time in terms of getting the details in place. So it's probably going to be, the rest of the video is going to be real time-lapse heavy. But let's go ahead. I'm going to refocus the camera. I'm going to erase these guidelines. And then you're going to see me do all the final line work with my trusty black Prismacolor. Okay, so we got the final line work done here, and I'm going to do just a little bit of real-time shading, but I do think, you know, this one had so many little details to go through in the real drawing part of it that we just need to control the length of this video and start to wind things down. I thought instead of getting too much into shading in terms of like the surface, I thought I'd just talk a little bit about light source and shadow. If you have the understanding that the light is coming from above, that tells you that all of the shadows will fall on the lower side, and in photos that I saw at least, that tended to have them, you know, collect all along this one line right here, conveniently. That they are maybe at slightly different angles, the way they fit around the body at that stage, and so all of the darkness was coming right in here. Such complex, you know, in doing this video, I ended up learning a lot about the body structure of a praying mantis, and I really have come away from this thinking, wow, man, it's a very complex structure. And that is why the dragonfly is secretly envious of the... He would never admit it, but he's like, oh man, that guy looks cool. What I wouldn't give for arms like that. Me with these scrawny little arms, but I got my wings. Just keep thinking about the wings, man. Anyway, before I completely lose my mind, a little too late for that, maybe. But I'm going to go ahead and kick it into time-lapse one last time. My apologies for not being able to do more of this real-time, but, you know, as I always say, a lot of people don't have 40, 50 minutes for a video, so hopefully you won't mind if I just go ahead and collapse down through the last part of this shading process, and then we'll be back with a few final words. Alright, well there's my video on how to draw a praying mantis. You probably saw that I pulled out my beloved white gouache to add a few highlights here and there, make the surface look a little more shimmering and shiny, but really the lion's share of the work was done by way of my humble Dixon Ticonderoga pencil. Please let me know what you thought about this video. It certainly is unusual for me to do a video on how to draw an insect, and who knows, I could do more in the months and years ahead if you want me to. But for now, let me go ahead and thank anyone who has supported me by getting any of my books, like Brody's Ghost and Miki Falls, my graphic novel series. Also, my newest book, The Realism Challenge, a book about hyper-realism. And finally, Mastering Manga and Mastering Manga 2, my How to Draw books. I really do greatly, greatly appreciate the support of people who help me by picking up any of these books. But for now, let me go ahead and lay down this pencil. I want to thank you all for watching this video. I hope you found it useful, and I'll be back with another one real soon.